So that's 2 straight weeks of Formula One racing for all of you fans out there who are enjoying the race. And that's 2 straight weeks of some very, very thrilling racing action because my word, even the Austrian Grand Prix, we thought that nothing could possibly top or live up to the British Grand Prix and the way it went last week. Well, the Austrian Grand Prix didn't quite top it, but it was still a very, very good race in its own right. And if you're a Ferrari fan, you would have enjoyed that race a lot, but also been experiencing some disappointment because, well, your main driver or the one who is competing could be or would be the closest competitor for the world title this year. Charles Leclerc takes home a well-deserved victory, and few would probably begrudge him that, given many felt that he should have been prioritized in the race in England as well. But the problems with Ferrari continue. It always seems like they seem to take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and that's exactly what happened here as well. Remember, as I said, they were on course for a 1-2 finish because Sainz had done the hard work, the pit stops had gone well, and he had gotten ahead of Max Verstappen and was running ahead of Verstappen when his engine gave out, the car caught on fire, and well, that was the end of his race. Obviously, he was very dejected. I mean, who wouldn't be in such a circumstance, because you've lost a clear-cut second spot podium, those many points through absolutely no fault of your own. But such is the nature of racing, and such has been the muddled nature of Ferrari's title bids this year, that every time they seem to be making some progress and they seem to get something right, something will go wrong in the background that wasn't entirely in their control, and that's exactly what happens. As a result, Max Verstappen, who was in fact the favorite going into this race, only ends up finishing second. Not a very ideal weekend for him, but again, I think he has a big enough lead at this point that he shouldn't be too worried about the kind of gap that exists. So obviously, he would obviously have preferred a win, but you can't really, predict this. And to be fair, the Ferraris did look like they were the faster cars once the tire changes were made. They were pretty comfortably much, much quicker. So that was obviously also something that couldn't be helped, because the Ferraris were pretty quick. And for Mercedes fans, many of whom would be long suffering this season, well, you get another podium finish courtesy of Lewis Hamilton. So that's 2 third-place finishes on the trot for Lewis Hamilton. But of course, he was only on course for a 4th-place finish. Ended up getting that third, thanks largely due to Sainz's retirement. Because as you were watching the race as well, you'd see the top 2 cars crossed the finish line really, really quickly. Hamilton crossed the finish line about 30-odd seconds later. He was nowhere near in contention for the race win or even a second spot, but considering the way Mercedes have been going and considering their recent struggles at Austria, they would be very happy with the fact that Hamilton finished third and George Russell finished fourth. So again, in a season of struggle, they've been remarkably consistent and picked up points when the top cars, one or both of them, has failed. Remember, even for Red Bull, it's not that ideal a weekend either, because Perez ended up having a bit of a crash with Russell, for which Russell ended up getting a penalty, and afterwards they had to retire Perez's car. So again, no points there. All the points that they've accumulated have been through Verstappen, and that's something that will hurt them in the Constructors' Championship, because Ferrari, again, they could have had 2 cars finishing as well, but they would get 26 points off Leclerc because he did get the fastest lap as well. So anyway, the top 4 was pretty well set in that regard. 5th, Esteban Ocon, he ended up having a quite a good weekend, and Alpine again showing some pace, both their cars finishing in the points. Fernando Alonso, by the way, who had a torrid time in the sprint, and even this time around in the race, started from last, was eons behind everyone, ended up getting a very respectable 10th-place finish, the last of the points finishes. So speaking of that, I remember in my preview for this race, I was talking about the midfield battle being very tight, but I had picked out Alpine and Haas as 2 of the favorites. Well, Alpine got a double points finish, as did the Haas. Mick Schumacher follows up his maiden points finish with, at Silverstone last weekend. He finished in the points last time. He finished 8th. This time around, he has got a 6th-place finish. So very, very good news for Schumacher Jr. there. Lando Norris ended up getting a 7th-place finish. Kevin Magnussen, the other Haas, in 8th. Daniel Ricciardo, who was nowhere near a factor in this race throughout, quietly, consistently snuck home, got a 9th-place finish. So again, even McLaren wouldn't be the worst weekend in the world for them, considering they did end up getting double points. But Alpine and Haas definitely the pick of the midfield teams in that regard. But let's move on and talk about, of course, what happened up front there. So I'll take a few of you guys' comments now. So Piyush Plaban says that, yeah, that was a scary sight on Carlos Sainz's car, and in the cost cap era will hurt Ferrari. Absolutely. it's not just the fact that there's a cost cap. I think he'll have to take an engine replacement, so could be set for a grid penalty as well in the next race, potentially. Let's see. I don't think there's much they'd be able to salvage from a power unit that was flaming. And yes, we too are glad that Sainz is indeed okay. Love Rami says, kudos to Leclerc, not a cakewalk to overtake Verstappen 3 times, but bravo to Mercedes and especially Shane you two securing a 3-4 in bad. Yeah, that's true actually. Not the worst finish in the world for Mercedes in a track where they were not expected to be doing well. 3-4 is very good, and it means they would be up and about there in the Constructors' Championship, if not the World Championship. I remember, where you finish in the Constructors' Championship matters because the prize money you get is based on the Constructors' Championship. So, and Lavrame also says that Ferrari have worked on their car to make it good and effective. Yeah, true. You know, I actually honestly did think that the Red Bulls would be favorites given their straight line speed. But the Ferraris had very, very good race pace. And yeah, I also agree with you when you said that Ocon did pretty well. Yes, 100th race for him this time around. He wasn't exactly going to be competing for your top 3 finish, but 5th place for the Alpine, pretty good finish. And also remember, the next race that will be happening in France. That is, of course, the home race of both, the Alpine team as well as Ocon. Both are French. So obviously that's also something that was good there, or at least they have something good to look forward to in the next race as well. So obviously if we're looking at, standings, I think Ferrari would be happy with how things went. They have nullified the lead just a tad, but I think they need, the biggest worry with Ferrari has been consistency and reliability. They've not been consistently good with their strategy calls, and reliability, well, you just need to look at what happened to Carlos Sainz and you'll get exactly what it is I'm talking about. So, obviously that's not ideal. For Red Bull too, didn't really happen. It wasn't really an ideal race in that regard because Perez ended up having a bit of a crash with Russell, and Russell, remember, was handed a penalty as well. He ended up serving a 5-second stop go, then had to get his nose changed. So very long pit stop first time around. Even Russell had a pretty good race, all things considered, to end up finishing 4th, because at one point, remember, even on team radio he was complaining over his pace. So good race. If you're actually the one team who would walk away happiest from here would be the Mercs, because both cars finished 3rd, 4th, not too bad. Again, for Ferrari, their reliability issues remain a concern. For Red Bull, they would be ruining bad luck that Sergio Perez was not in and about there fighting with the points, because let me tell you, if Perez was up there, I don't think Hamilton was getting that podium position. But, the Mercedes cars might be a little slower than the front two, but they are frighteningly consistent, not had reliability issues, so they can be there in and abouts to pick up the points when the other teams are failing. That's what they did. Full credit. So obviously, two race weekends in 2 weeks. We were a bit spoiled in that regard, but now there's going to be a 2-week gap, and the next race is going to be at the circuit Paul Ricard in France. Not one of my favorite circuits, I'll admit, because those lines in and around just make it a very hard race to follow. But, well, let's see how that happens, and we will be joining you guys for that particular race as well. Before, during, after, all, I'll be there for all, so don't worry. I'm joining you for that. Thank you guys so much for joining us in this particular review of the Austrian Grand Prix. If you enjoy what it is that we do, please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and last but not the least, tap the bell icon so that you know every single time we go live or upload a new video. As always, thank you so much for joining us. I've been Shane Dias, and I hope to see you guys very, very soon. There's a lot of action going on right now, and you can get all of the best coverage on that action here at Sports Today. Thank you very much.